You are now tuning in to the Bodybuilding Lifestyle Podcast, the #1 source for unfiltered truth in bodybuilding with your host, Elon Muskular. This podcast is sponsored by MarketRecs, web design and marketing automation for online coaches. If you're an online coach that is operating out of your Instagram DMs, a Google form on your Linktree, or worse, a Gmail link in your bio, you're leaving a ton of money on the table. Maybe you have a website, but it kind of sucks and it's not integrated into a greater marketing strategy. Think about all the clients who would be interested in working with you, but haven't quite crossed the line of contacting you because you have not made the process smooth enough for them. At MarketRecs, we create high converting websites, landing pages, lead magnets, and email marketing flows to help online coaches get more clients on autopilot so that you can focus on serving your clients and doing what you love. Head over to marketrecs.co to book a free consultation call to learn more about how we can help scale your coaching business. What is up, guys, and welcome to the Bodybuilding Lifestyle Podcast, episode 19. I'm really excited today. We have Hannah Chan, the most savage bitch in the fitness industry. Those are her words, okay, not mine. And I found Hannah because she targets me with her ads every single day, probably 4 times a day. See her Facebook ads. She runs like 5 different ads at a time. And I just love the copy on the ads because it was so savage. Like, she was talking about BDSM, how how you're scared to charge high prices and stuff like that. And I actually, the first time I saw her ads and stuff like that, I felt mad. Like, who is this girl? Why is she calling me out? And because I grew up with a very poverty/middle class mindset. But then I started to go a little bit deeper into the material and really look into what she was saying. And I think that she has like a good point, and I want to explore it today, maybe argue a little bit about it, talk about it, and learn about Hannah because she seems like a really interesting girl with a good sense for business. So welcome to the podcast, Hannah.
Thank you for having me. I am pumped to be here.
Awesome. So I want to jump into your background a little bit first, and then we can talk about what you're doing right now with the business coaching for Fit Pros. So from what I understand, your background is that you were a bodybuilder and then you were a powerlifter. Could you talk a little bit about your journey with that? And I want to know your numbers, like I know that you won some meets. So let's talk, some meathead talk first.
Yay. Okay. So when I first started lifting, this was maybe like 9 years ago now. And like everyone, I just lifted because I wanted to, look good for the boys, right? So I started lifting to just generic bodybuilding stuff. And then eventually I was like, I'm pretty strong. Maybe I should try switching my focus to powerlifting, because a lot of the time I think within the fitness industry, it can get super obsessive in terms of like eating disorders and just being overly concerned with the way you look. So I switched over to powerlifting because it was a lot more objective in terms of like, hey, if you make a lift, you make the lift. If not, then like you don't, right? And then I did my first competition. It was a local one. I won that. And I was like, maybe I'm pretty good and pretty strong. So then since then I started competing. I slowly won the British Championships and then went to Europeans and World representing GB. And that's kind of where it all began for me.
So the powerlifting mindset, I think that powerlifters in a sense are like even more hardcore than bodybuilders. Bodybuilders like to talk a big game, but at the end of the day, I feel like for bodybuilders and people that are really into it, really they do it a lot for like you said, they want to look good for other people. Some people some people don't. Like, there's that bodybuilder with that social anxiety that doesn't care about what other people think, and he's just crazy like that. But I think that definitely is obviously a major factor in the fitness industry, and the powerlifters obviously don't care about how they look. But you seem to have maintained a good physique when you were powerlifting. Is that true? Or were you like a fat, like stereotypical powerlifter, like eating cheeseburgers and stuff like that?
I wouldn't say I was always fat, but I do think that if I just continued on with bodybuilding, or if my focus was in bodybuilding, more hypertrophy, then I definitely could have maintained a physique that was a lot leaner. Because the big thing is, in powerlifting, what they don't tell you is there's also a really big element of eating disorders and pressure to be at a certain weight. Because for me, my weight class was 57 kilos, which in pounds, I think is like 123, 125. And so for
Sounds right.
me, yeah, like I used to just always hover maybe like 5 to 10 pounds above that. And so even though technically, yeah, I was powerlifting and I was pretty strong, there was definitely still that internal pressure of, hey, like, did you go over your macros today? Or damn, like you can't get too fat or else you're not going to make weight and things like that.
So even while you were powerlifting, you ate like a kind of like a more strict bodybuilding style diet. Could you talk about like the diet for a female powerlifter? I think that could be just an interesting like little topic. Like, what did your diet look like if you could just describe a day at the time when you were competitive?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the off season, so when I was quite far out from competition, I would, well, shout out to Lane Norton. The approach I did use or do use is flexible dieting, or if it fits your macros, which is you have certain calories and, macronutrients set, and then you would just fill that 80-20. So for me, at least in theory, what I would go for was kind of 80% clean or clean, like vegetables, more unprocessed foods. And then the 20% I would fill with pretty much whatever I wanted. So in the off season, I wouldn't track too much. I would just eat intuitively. The main thing for me was making sure that I got enough protein. So I'd eat around 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. And just make sure that I'm eating like maybe 4 times throughout the day, getting enough protein in those days.
So how is your diet? One thing I like to talk a lot about on this podcast is like, I like to have people who achieved something in, bodybuilding physique, even if it's just looking good, doesn't have to be on the stage or whatever. And then now transitioned into business. And what I found is, and I've been having a lot of conversations that like people who do that, they have to take a step back from like the obsessive, obsession with eating on the clock and training so intensely, because you can't run a business to a high level and also do that. It's too much on one person at one time. And I'm currently experiencing this now as I launched my coaching a few months ago, and now I'm starting to get more clients, and like, I don't have time. I can't be on that like 6 meals a day because I just get too tired with all like the carbs and everything like that. So I've been looking for different approaches to, combat that and still be able to do both. How has your diet changed from going from like a competitive powerlifter to now like, lifestyle kind of
Yeah.
bodybuilder, powerlifter, whatever?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the biggest thing for me was not being so emotionally invested or just emotionally like obsessive over, did I eat enough protein? Did I hit my macros? Did I go over? And oh my gosh, like I haven't eaten 5 hours, I'm going to lose my gains and things like that. Because a big thing with everyone who takes it very seriously is like, to an extent, you're always going to sacrifice something. And for me, that was lifestyle, like social events with people, and just that mental obsession of, sometimes it's like when you're really deep in bodybuilding or powerlifting, it's almost like you look at a plate of food and your immediate instinct is, oh, well, what are the macros in that, or how many calories is in that, versus am I actually going to enjoy this? Same with when you go to restaurants, you choose restaurants based on like, does the menu have calorie counts on them, versus like, hey, I want to go to a place because I actually enjoy it. So the biggest thing for me was actually taking a step back from that and eating like a normal person and not thinking twice about what I'm necessarily eating, and just being a lot more intuitive with it, but ultimately finding the balance of, hey, like this is life and you're here to enjoy life, and fit your diet around your life as opposed to fit your life around your diet. So I just eat pretty intuitively and try to get enough protein in. Pretty similar.
What I found though from, people who used to be super into bodybuilding or powerlifting or any sort of sport where you have to manage your diet closely and then transition to being like normal people again, to use that phrase. It's like, but we still have the foundation of the muscle mass, which increased our metabolism. And we also have a better understanding of food. Like you said, we can look at a plate and analyze what's on it in like, 0.1 seconds, whereas most people wouldn't know. So even when we go back to like the normal population kind of thing, we still end up looking way better than the average person because we have that foundation of muscle and knowledge. So that's kind of like how I refer to like the bodybuilding lifestyle. Like once you get past that point, now you still have those skills and investments that you put into it. So that's awesome. And how's your training changed? Like you must have been really pushing yourself a lot. Did you dial back on the intensity with the training? How do you train now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll start with what I was doing before. So before, my lifestyle was, I was working 50 hours a week in a corporate job. The second the clock strikes 6, I'd leave the office and go to the gym and train for like 2 hours. And what I was training back then for powerlifting was very high intensity when it came to the weight. So a lot of singles, doubles, triples, like an RP 8, 9 sort of thing. And I was training 4 times a week then. So like, since I just moved away from powerlifting, what I'm actually doing now is higher volume. And the main or big thing that I've changed is slowing down the eccentric a lot, actually pausing at the bottom of each lift and then lifting the weight. So before, I was coached by, I don't know if you know RTS, Reactive Training Systems. They're like a group of coaches who train powerlifters. And now I recently hired a Renaissance periodization to do my training. So everything is very hypertrophy focused. It's high volume, higher reps, 4 times a week still.
Yeah, I like their training. I think that they talk a lot about like, they have like that mesocycle training and they
Yeah.
increase the volume over time. So like at first it's not that crazy and then you build up to something. I think that that's very smart as opposed to just like going balls to the wall every single time, which like, we're young, so we've been doing that for a long time. But like as you start to get older and have other priorities, like you can't kill yourself every workout because it's just like, it's just going to kill you and wipe you out, so.
Yeah, exactly. I think even like just how much it was taxing you mentally as well. Like in powerlifting, I enjoyed it, but when you kind of have to psych yourself up for each set and it's so high intensity, and in the back of your mind, you're like, like, I hope I don't miss groove and kill myself. Like that, I don't necessarily have to deal with. So right now, well, not right now because the gyms are shut, but since I switched over, it's actually been a lot more enjoyable. Like, granted, it's still difficult. Everything's kind of high volume, higher reps, high frequency, but overall, it's a lot more fun as well.
So how do you, now that your primary focus is business and building your business, but your business is based around still marketing to fitness professionals. So how do you view your like image, when you think about Hannah Chan as a brand and what you want to like present in terms of how you look? Like, are you still trying to stay within like shape of a fitness professional? Is how you look important to you? And how does it fit into your overall strategy at this point?
Yeah, for sure. So for me personally, I've never really looked at it from that perspective in terms of like, hey, I have to look a certain way because of what I do. I think in me working towards my goal now, which is more so just general health and more hypertrophy, just, looking better, what every girl wants, right? I think that's definitely a goal that I would have regardless of what I'm doing now, not necessarily because I'm doing what I'm doing now. So I think it helps. Like, we definitely have a lot of clients who say, hey, I really resonated with you more because I saw that you're in a powerlifting background and so am I. And hey, I like that you're actually, deep in fitness and that's actually your background as an athlete. So, it does help, but I wouldn't necessarily say that my goal is to do this because of my brand for business, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay. And then what are your best lifts? Like, what did you do in competition?
Okay, the fun part. Let me do this in pounds. So my best squat in competition is 308.6. So that's 140 kilos. Bench is 182. And deadlift is 342.
I'm impressed. If I saw a girl lift that in the gym, I would be like, what the hell?
Yeah, thank you. Those were my lifts in competition. Now I think I might be able to do like 70% of that as my 1 rep max, but still decent. Yeah.
Yeah. It never really fully goes away, but you're not all
Yeah.
jacked up. So,
Yeah.
all right, awesome. So that's really cool, and it's good to learn about your background, because before we jump into the kind of like the more lifestyle and business talk, because I just want people to understand, where you're coming from. And the next thing I wanted to touch on was your experience in corporate America,
Hmm.
because the last guy that was on my podcast, Brandon DeCruz, he works as a national sales manager at Innova Farm, the supplement company, and
Mm.
he's an online fitness coach, and he does fitness modeling, and the guy does everything. He was telling me how he wakes up at 3:30 a.m. every day, and like just it was I was like, I don't even understand. Like, you are Superman, and I cannot apply what you're saying into my life all the way, because it's like, but your story I really resonated with, because I also have almost the same story as you. Like, graduated college, went into corporate America, and just fucking hated it. So can we
Mm.
talk a little bit about that? Like, how is your experience graduating college, going into, the corporate world? And what did you feel like that first year or 2 years out of school, like, about what you were doing with your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated in 2015 with a psychology degree. And I was like, okay, time to actually, go in the real world now, right? So I remember like the time I graduated, everyone was applying for jobs, and for some reason I didn't. So last minute, I was just going through like onlinejobs.com or whatever it was, posted my CV there, and then I had a bunch of recruiters calling me, and I went for a few interviews. Eventually, landed at a job, which was a graduate recruitment job where I'd basically be recruiting other university graduates and then placing them into entry level sales jobs. So at that time, I was like, well, like, this is my only job offer. I'm not really going to look around anymore. Like, I'm going to do this. And it wasn't great. Like, it was very typical sales environment of just, cold call as many people as you can and try to pitch them on a job that they probably didn't even want, because a lot of people have this weird like stigma around sales, right? It's like, oh, sales are kind of pushy and it's like boiler room, and that's kind of what it was. And so me like having to pitch that onto other people when I wasn't even brought in was kind of weird. So the culture wasn't great, and I left that job after 3 months to work in kind of high level headhunting for the pharmaceutical sector. And at that time, I was taking home like £1,600 a month, which is around maybe 2000 US, living in London. And my rent already ate up half of my rent. Sorry, my salary already ate up, like, my rent already just would eat up half my salary, right? And I did that for 2 years, working 50-hour weeks. And this one time I asked my job for a pay rise, and she said no. And that's when I thought, I don't know if I want to do this, right? I don't know if I want to just work for someone else for the rest of my life, just editing Excel spreadsheets, when I know I could be doing a lot more and just being some person's assistant, letting someone define what I was worth and what I would get paid. Like, I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck after having been in a job for like 3 years. So then at that point, I started listening to a lot of podcasts to do with business and entrepreneurship. And everyone I was listening to just had this like the same story. It was like, oh yeah, I hated my job. And then like I took massive risks and I invested a bunch of money in with credit cards and I invested in mentors and like now I'm rich. And that seemed to be their story. So I was like, huh, this is interesting. But I don't know if it's possible for me, right? It seems like it's risky. Seems like only certain people who had certain skills were able to actually, quit their jobs and build a business. And eventually, I think I was so indoctrinated by the main themes that everyone I was listening to was saying that I was just like, yeah, maybe I do have to take risks. So I was like, fuck it. And then one day I quit my job.
So literally people online convinced you to quit your job and put all your money, like, invest into running your business. Do you think that, did you have the drive to be an entrepreneur? Do you think that it's something that you would have done otherwise? Like, imagine a world without the internet, where no one is giving you advice or in your ear about this kind of stuff. Is Hannah Chan still, the most savage bitch in the fitness biz?
Oh man, not even close, man. Like I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur meant. I couldn't even spell that word. And it's, full credit to my ex-boyfriend. He was initially the one who, and we met in powerlifting. So we were both kind of like, obsessed with the gym. And he was the one who initially said, hey, I want to start my own online business, right? I want to coach fitness. And I was kind of jealous and I was like, oh, come on, babe, like be realistic. That's never going to happen full time. But deep down, there was also a part of me that was thinking, okay, so he's got the balls to go for it and I don't. And really, that's why I'm being maybe, unsupportive. And I see that a lot as well, especially within our clients, is whenever they start to try and make something of themselves, it's really common for their friends and family to try and tell them to be realistic, because the reality is it's easier to look at someone and then try to bring them back down than it is for you to actually reflect on yourself and be like, hey, they're doing something great with their life. Why aren't I?
What is up, guys? And thank you so much for listening to the Bodybuilding Lifestyle Podcast. If you're interested in transforming your body and getting shredded this summer, I put together an awesome free 30-minute mini course called Shredded Secrets of Fitness Influencers that you can grab at elonmuskular.com or visit the link in the description of this podcast. This is real, raw, true information that you won't find anywhere else. Head over to elonmuskular.com/shredded to check it out right now. Yeah, it's absolutely mind-boggling to me. If I see somebody wanting to do an entrepreneurial venture or something like that, even if I know that they're going to fail, and I just know, like, like in my gut, just in my business sense, that like this is a bad idea, I would still encourage anybody to try, because I've tried so many businesses in the past and completely failed, but I learned so much from that. You know what I mean? And I can, even in this business right now, it could fail tomorrow and I would still be 100% happy with all the time that I put in, because it's all it is experience the next time you do the business. So it's like bodybuilding, like all the time that you put in the gym, like you still have that muscle memory from like what you gained. And it's the same thing with business. All the skills that you learn running a business and stuff like that, you can apply to the next. Even if you didn't make any money, you just fell flat on your face, wasted $10,000 and just died, like as long as you can like get up out of that hole and just keep trying, and then you learned a $10,000 lesson, and that's worth way more than not learning a $10,000 lesson. So I think that's definitely a good. So you worked in headhunting. Did you ever think like, how can I get more money out of the corporate world and like climb up the ladder and become, like a manager or whatever? Like, did you ever think that, that could be a potential path to more lucrative lifestyle? Why like such a drastic 180?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give a bit more backstory, when I quit my job, the reason that I gave my manager was that I quit because I had another job offer that paid double. And it was true. And the reality is, I remember talking to my ex-boyfriend at the time. That was after I, summoned the courage to ask for a pay raise and got rejected. He was like, you're so underpaid. Like, you have to look for a better job. So I started looking, and eventually I was offered another job that paid really, really well, based on my experience. So I took that job almost just because of the money, because I didn't want to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. But inside, I knew that it was a job that was going to be boring. Like, the people there just culturally were like robots, and I knew that I wouldn't enjoy it. So I remember taking the job, telling the headhunter that placed me, like, hey, yeah, like I'm going to take the job. I'd signed the contract and everything, and I was going to start in 2 weeks. And then that's when I told my boss, like, hey, I quit because I have another job offer. And then in that 2-week period, I was just thinking, like, do I really want to do this? And the answer was no. So then I actually told the new job, like, hey, I'm sorry, I changed my mind. I'm going to start my own business. And my future manager, she never replied to my email. And the headhunter who was going to place me thought the deal was signed and done. And he tried to convince me to take the job. And he was like, look, like, you're not going to be able to start a business and a business that pays this much. So just take the job. And I said no. I kind of just took a massive risk, a risk that most people would say is like pretty crazy. But I think at the end of the day, like that's like risk tolerance, and someone's ability to take risk is really the main determining factor between whether someone is actually going to be a successful entrepreneur or not, right? Because it's not like what connections they have, it's not how much money they have, it's are they willing to take risks that most people aren't willing to take, at least in my opinion. Like that's what I think it comes down to.
I think that, as someone that comes from like the middle class or the lower middle class, then you have to take huge risks. And I think that it's really the risk, how big of a risk that you need to take is really defined by your financial and social kind of upbringing situation at the time. Like we know that like in very low income, communities, they often take huge risks, like dealing drugs and stuff like that, because that's the only way that they see to get out of, so they have to take huge risks. Someone like me, I don't know like what your family's background is financially, but mine, I come from very like no money at all, like no money at all, immigrant family, single mom. So it's just like, no, there's no money here. And so I understood that I have to take a big risk. You know what I mean? Like that's just how it is, because you don't go from here to here. Like what's going to fill in that gap? It's going to have to be some kind of a risk. But if you're like super rich and you want to start your own business and you have like $100,000 behind you to hire, you as a business coach, you have a $30,000 budget for Facebook ads that your dad gave you, and master's degree already. And if you fail, then nothing happens and you just try again, then you don't really have to take a risk. So I guess it really just depends, like, you know what I mean? Like how much you have behind you is going to be a big determining factor. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. And also it's the way you think. And the reason why I say that is because we've had people who have, we've had people like us, our advisors, right? We've talked to people who have like, $10,000, $20,000 in the bank. And they'll say, which is a lot compared to most of the market. And they'll say things like, like, I just don't have the money to invest because it's not comfortable or it's too risky. And then on the flip side, my first ever client actually in the business space was someone who he later told me he had to do Uber Eats on Boxing Day in Canada, which is freezing, to come up with the investment to work with us. And then he hit like 10K in his second month. So I think a large part of when it comes to investing, from what I've seen, a big determinant is mindset of, hey, is someone willing to find the money or at least be resourceful to make it happen? And are they willing to take on that risk? Because someone with, 20 grand in the bank might not be willing to take on that risk. Whereas someone with 2 grand in the bank might be like, hey, I'm down to bet on myself. I'm going to take out a credit card and max it out if it's what it takes to get to my goals.
Do you recommend that? Are you so confident in the fact that you could turn, somebody from in debt to, being successful, that you would say that, if you're in a position where you're ready to work, you're not just going to buy this and sit on your ass, but you're ready to do everything that I say, and you don't have enough money to to pay for your coaching, would you recommend that somebody take that risk? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs have that story, and I don't know if you know what I mean? Like, I just don't know if I would recommend that to somebody. I would always recommend someone start a business, but I would never recommend somebody go in debt. So how do you justify that and have the mindset of being like, even if you have to take on debt, it's still worth it?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, it's always down to the individual who's investing to take full ownership. Because, like, I agree, no one should bully anyone into doing something that they don't want to do. But it's what a lot of the time when we contextualize it, people have no problem dropping tens of thousands on university or even hundreds of thousands onto real estate when the return is a lot slower and a lot less. But when it comes to maybe 5,000 or 7,000 or 10,000 into a business where you can make it back within the next 4 weeks, suddenly it seems like people are a lot more risk averse to that. So I think a large part of it is society, in which we normalize investing in education and university and real estate and stocks, but not so much entrepreneurship. And in terms of like, hey, would I recommend someone go into debt, like, and take out a credit card to work with us? if I truly, like, I would never straight up tell someone to do it if they don't want to. I know we've had multiple clients who have maxed out their credit cards to work with us, and it's completely changed their life. So the way I see it, they need to bet on themselves. And if you're someone who, like, not everyone agrees with me, right? So this is just my personal opinion, but for me, like, I was okay with doing it because I was already at rock bottom. So I was like, okay, well, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, but besides the money, I'm in a job that I hate, a job that literally, like, eats away at my soul, and I can't actually help people I know I could help if I knew how to reach them. For me, the risk of just, another 5 years down the line with that same lifestyle and lack of impact, that was bigger risk for me than putting a couple thousand on a credit card.
So I get what you're saying, and I appreciate the, honest and candid response. Like, really, I know a lot of business coaches would just be like, yeah, max it out, let's go. You know what I mean? But I just think that, like, yeah, obviously it's like, if the person is in the right place and it's the right time for them, and it's really like, they're at that point where their back is against the wall, and they either, it's make or break, then it's either make or break by yourself, or it's make or break with somebody that knows exactly what they're doing and is going to guide you every step of the way. So which one is more likely to work? And that makes perfect sense to me. So I want to talk about your transition from, and this is an idea that I've been obsessed with lately, and I would love to hear your thoughts. I've been, like, just so excited to talk to you about this, and I've been talking to everybody about this lately. So I've been on the process recently with starting my coaching business and building the Muskular brand and the podcast and all this stuff, of shifting from what I call like a middle class mindset to a millionaire mindset. And like a middle class mindset is like, I'm going to do everything myself, like, I'm not going to hire anybody to do it. If there's like faster web hosting that will make my website load in like 0.1 seconds, or there's slower web hosting that makes my website load in 2 seconds, although I know that it loading way faster is going to help my conversion rate, but $60 a month sounds like a lot, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but then it's like, how many clients do I actually have to sign in order to get $60 a month? You know what I mean? So I'm starting to do those calculations as a business owner and be like, it actually does not make sense financially to not invest in yourself, because you're going to have less time. Your shit's not going to work properly. You're going to convert way less traffic, and your brand ends up looking more unprofessional when you're not investing in it. So what do you think about, like, in terms of how to run a business? Like, how do you make sure that the money that you're putting in is, invested in yourself, and how do you set the prices of your service properly to make sure that you can cover the costs of your, investments? Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that you said that you were charging like $30 a month, for example, for your coaching. So if you're charging it before, like way before when you first started powerlifting coaching. So if you're charging $30 a month, that doesn't leave much money left over to invest in, coaching and all this different stuff. So how do you make that calculation?
Yeah. So I think when it's at the beginning of, when someone's at the beginning of their business, the way they look at pricing isn't so, isn't half as systemized as you just suggested, which isn't, in an ideal world, everyone should be taking that calculated, like that scientific way of pricing. For me at the beginning, it was more so like, what can I charge without feeling guilty for taking someone's money? And it was dirt cheap, £30 a month. Whereas I think now what I recommend clients is you should definitely choose to price your services in a way that you don't feel like you're selling yourself short, or where it's not painful because you feel like you're giving so much away and not getting a right amount in return. But at the same time, you do want to price your offer in a way that also puts you a bit out of your comfort zone. So for me and my clients, that's kind of how I suggest they price.
But wouldn't that be very like person to person dependent? Like, some people might feel awkward to charge, $100 a month if they've been charging $30 a month. So, I mean, I've been having, honestly, since I started this thing, I've been having like a lot of issue figuring out how to price, my services, because I feel like fitness coaching, the prices are all over the place and it's very confusing, especially when you're first starting out. Like, how do you price properly?
Let me just grab my charger.
Cool. And so I guess that's why they targeted me with your ads. And I've seen you talking about like charging like $1,500 a month and stuff like that. Is that just like shock marketing, or do you really recommend, like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you determine where someone is at in their business and what they should charge according to where they're at? Like, let's say that you're a new coach. Is there any value in pricing low at first in order to get more clients to build a good reputation? Or should you just come out of the gate swinging and asking for a lot of money if you never even really coached somebody before?
Yeah, great question. I love this topic. So when we say, high ticket coaching and in the fitness space, high ticket is typically anything that is four figures for 90 days. So $1,000 and above for 90 days, which is maybe like 333 a month. That's what's considered high ticket. And the answer is no, it's not just for shock. And the reason, the way you want to think about it is, okay, as a fitness coach, you're not just there to send someone a meal plan and an Excel spreadsheet. Really, the problem that you are helping them solve is life-changing. So for example, if someone's able to actually, lose fat and get the body of their dreams, what does it mean for their life? And what it means for them is they're going to be able to actually have the confidence to date and actually get married, right? That is invaluable. Like, it's priceless. And they might actually have confidence to, like, stand up for themselves and ask for promotion in their careers. And that in itself is also a priceless transformation. So a big mindset shift for our clients is, hey, when you're pricing your service, price it not based on the physical deliverables that you give them, like spreadsheet or meal plans or one-on-one, rather price it on the significance of the transformation at the end of working with you. Does that make sense? Because the other thing too is you want to look at, like, hey, what happens if they don't do this? And for someone who has health issues, the cost of, like, yeah, hey, 1,500 is an investment, but the cost of not doing that could be they end up in, like, $5,000 for medical bills, right? But then also, what is it costing them, like, mentally, physically? What is it costing their relationships for them to not be able to fix a specific problem? So I think when we look at it and put it into that context, then yeah, 1,500 is an investment that, yeah, is out of their comfort zone. But I think it's more than fair based on the result that people get.
But how do you like, do you take into account, because when you're trying to build a business, right, like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you're thinking about the service that you can offer people and the value of the service. That's important, but we're not living in a vacuum, right? Like, there's competition. So
Mm-hmm.
if they're like, it's not like they just talk to you, right? So how do you evaluate, the market and competitors? And like, for example, Renaissance periodization, like, they don't charge $1,500 for a month. They don't even charge probably $1,500 for 3 months. It's more like 250, 300 a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and you would hire them. You probably would have hired them even if you had to pay $1,500 a month. So maybe they're underpriced, and maybe everyone's underpriced. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? But how do you, as me, for example, justify charging more than Renaissance periodization? That's like an established business with, all this stuff.
Yeah, great question. So a large part of it is in the positioning. And if you think about it, kind of like, hey, a Prada handbag, right, versus a handbag from maybe Target. Technically, those two things might serve the same purpose and the same function, but in the Prada example, their positioning and their marketing is completely different. So really, in terms of fulfillment, like, yeah, it can be the same. Like, it can just be an Excel spreadsheet. It can just be, trainerized or one-on-one communication. But the key between $1,500 offer and something that's $50 does tend to come down to the marketing strategy. And a lot of people say, well, is it unethical to charge high prices, right? Or like, hey, like, isn't it just greedy and you're taking people's money? So the flip side, and I used to think that too, but the flip side to look at it is a lot of people simply want to pay high prices because of that perceived status. So it's a big reason why a lot of people will hire celebrity personal trainers, because they want the perceived best of the best, right? It's a big reason why people will choose to pay more for a Prada handbag versus a cheap one, because they want that perceived, like, status of being the best. So just to counter, that common belief of, hey, is that unethical? I would say no. Now, I'm not saying like, if someone's just like threatened to get evicted, that you should push your services on them. But just like we spoke about earlier, if you actually can deliver what you promise, then the end result is still worth a lot more than a high ticket price point. And the bonus of charging a high price is that the clients a lot of the time tend to be more committed. So I don't know maybe you've experienced this, maybe you haven't. For me, whenever I was charging really low or even doing stuff for free because I wanted to help everyone, they ended up not even valuing what I was saying and what I was telling them to do. And so because they weren't following through on the plan, they weren't getting results. And it made me look bad as the coach, and I couldn't even use that testimonial because they weren't getting results. And it made them look bad because they weren't happy because they weren't getting results. And so sometimes like what I've seen is that, especially in fitness, when it does require them to have some, skin in the game, charging really low can tend to backfire on both people.
Really appreciate you tuning in to this episode of the Bodybuilding Lifestyle Podcast. I wanted to take this chance to tell you about my one-on-one coaching program, Physique Mastery Coaching. If you ever wanted to work with me directly, this is the best way to do it. We have coaching plans for all income levels starting from $99 a month, as well as one-off calls where I create a lesson plan custom tailored to your unique situation. We talk a lot about hardcore performance-enhancing drugs on this podcast, as well as advanced diet and training principles. Don't waste your precious time, energy, or health learning how to implement all this on your own. Get in touch with me and I will guide you on a straight path to your physique goals. Check out elonmuskular.com to book a free physique mastery consultation call with me. I've definitely experienced that because the way that I coach people in the past, like with online and people who want my advice and stuff like that, is like, the way that I've done it before I started to try to make it a business, just freelance on the side, has always been like, hey man, I love to lift, you heard about me through a friend or whatever, like it's no problem, send me a few bucks, I'll whip something up for you, we can chat, like I'll give you advice, meal plan, whatever, diet, training, anything you want. Just Venmo me, like $70, we'll make it happen, that type of thing. And, as somebody who's been into fitness for a long time, we all have that experience. Like, we're just like that guy who's like, we're not going to, lay it all out for you for free, but if you throw us a bone, we love to talk about it. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? And it's been really tough for me to shift from that to like starting a brand, a business, and being like, I can't charge this low and have this like casual of like a pricing strategy because it devalues my brand. At the end of the day, like it's not just me, a random guy now. It's like you're signing up with Muscular Coaching, Physique Mastery, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, throw me a couple bucks on Venmo. It's just unprofessional. You know what I mean? So I totally get that, and I've been there. And honestly, you're one of the first people that targeted me that was like, hey man, you need to charge more. And I get that because like when you charge less too, like you start to be resentful. Like when you get the check-ins, you're like, oh, like I have to answer this now. And they want all these details. And how much am I really making from this? You do like the mental calculation. You're like, I'm losing money if I respond to this email. Like if this client cancels, I will make more money because I won't have to spend my time with their email. I got too much shit going on.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I was in that same position. I was just, I had a few powerlifting peers who kind of like looked up to me and thought I could help them. And I had massive money mindset issues myself. And I never really wanted to ask for money because then I didn't want them to think I was greedy and I didn't want other people to think I was all about the money. So I would just be like, hey, yeah, like pay me what you want. Right. And that'd be like $30. Yeah. And then they wouldn't even do the work. And so you spend hours writing a program and you do that mental calculation of, okay, well, I'm maybe spending 5 hours on them a month. And, so I'm being paid $7 an hour. Minimum wage. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I realized that I can't do that. And there's definitely going to be big changes there's already been big changes in the pricing, but I started way too low and have been raising it way too low according to the load that I've been getting. Now have like a bunch of clients still on these like low plans. And I used to work at a software company, and it was kind of like this too. They initially did the offer very cheap to get a lot of, clients and testimonials and stuff like that. And then these people were on like the legacy plans. And when we tried to, I worked in software sales, by the way, software
Mm-hmm.
marketing and sales. And when you call these people on the legacy plan and try to upsell them to the new plan, that, yeah, it's better, it has more features, but it's not that much better, but the price is way higher. They're like, they think that you're trying to scam them. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm not going from this service at this price to this almost the same service at a much higher price. But the problem is that you already gave them everything for way too little. Now they don't value it. They're spoiled. You spoiled them. And so I think that when you do that, you like ruin the industry as a whole. You devalue everybody. You devalue our service, what we're doing. And it's unethical to charge too low, not enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a middle point. I don't know. Maybe I need to work with you to understand how to do like the super premium stuff. But I think that, somewhere around 200 to 300 a month is fair, really, for the work that is actually goes into coaching somebody. Like you said, like, 5-6 hours a week or a month or whatever. I forgot what you said, but I need to do the calculation of how much time I actually do spend working with every client. Obviously
Mm-hmm.
everyone's different, but what do you think about this? What do you think about like a tiered strategy though? Like this much, but you only check in with me, like, let's say once a month, and then this much gets you like a video call every week. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about something like that, like a tiered offer?
Yeah. So what I recommend my clients is most of my clients have one high ticket package. So that high ticket offer would be like on average $1,500 for 3 months. And that tends to be regardless of how much experience or testimonials they have. The main thing that they have to be able to do is produce results for clients, right? Because it doesn't matter if, and like side tangent, doesn't matter if someone has 1 year's experience or 10 years experience. If they can get the client the result that they promise, then that's fine, right? That's not unethical. So with most of our clients, what we recommend is one high ticket offer of $1,500 for 3 months, and then also one low ticket. And that low ticket offer could be something like half the investment for half the time frame, or it could be half the investment with less hands-on one-on-one support.
Gotcha.
So like you said, yeah, the high ticket might have that high touch one-on-one element, whereas the low ticket might be a bit more self-paced with maybe like a once a week email check-in.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And okay, so you got this client, they know how to serve people, they're charging the right prices, right? They fix their money mindset. What do they do now? Like, how do you actually recommend that people acquire new customers? And I understand that, once you have interest, you're going to have to learn sales skills, and you do offer like a free sales course that's very, useful in terms of understanding how to sell, how to position yourself to be able to charge these prices. But what are the traffic, like if I come to work with you tomorrow, like how am I going to get traffic better?
Yeah. So within business, if we look at the client acquisition side, there's like two main things. The first is generating leads, and the second is closing them. So in the high ticket space, what we recommend is instead of just, sending someone the prices in the DMs and just hoping they get back to you, what you actually want to do is you want to arrange a free consultation with them. That could be a 45-minute phone call. And on that phone call, that's when you actually dive into their problem, what's working, what's not working, their goals. And if it's a good fit, then you'd actually pitch your services on the phone and take payment before you even hang up the phone.
And
so
probably people are scared shitless when you tell them this too. Like, now I have to sell also.
yeah, exactly. And like that's the thing too, like building a business is going to require people to get out of their comfort zones. And I don't know how many ads you get hit with, but sometimes people like to convey the message that it's really easy and it's really simple. And it's actually the opposite of that. Like, it's going to be hard, and it does require people to step out of their comfort zones a lot. So yeah, like in general with that business model, the more leads you generate, the more phone calls you can book, the more you can pitch your offer, and the more clients you're going to get.
And so in order to get those consultations though, do you recommend driving them with ads?
Yeah. So what I always recommend in the beginning is we want to acquire those conversations or those calls organically first, which means without paid ads. And the biggest mistake that coaches make is they run paid ads too early. And so what happens is they spend money on paid ads, but they don't have a proven system that has been validated organically. And you want to look at paid ads almost like steroids. You should only use them once you have a foundation.
Oh, if
So
it's like steroids, then get me all of them. How do I want to set up 10? More is better.
yeah, like that's a common mistake that people make is they'll think like, oh, paid ads, Facebook ads, but hey, if you haven't sold a few packages organically first, then do that first. Because what happens if you're spending like if you're spending like, I don't know, what do you think most people would spend on paid ads a month, like just starting out?
Maybe like, I don't know, it could be anywhere from 300 to like, I would say around
three to
300 a
500.
month. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, okay, say you spend 300 to 500 a month into paid ads. At the very least, to break even, you're going to have to sell a package for $300 to $500. And it's like, hey, selling to your friends and family is hard enough without a system. Can you sell to a random stranger on the internet? And for most people, unless they have a proper system, the answer is going to be no. But then, of course, you also want to remember that you don't just want to break even. You want to be profitable. So at scale, after software expenses, calculating your actual time, if you're spending $300 on Facebook ads, you're probably going to want to make a sale of at least 600. So then we got to ask ourselves, like, okay, do we know how to actually sell someone at $600 and pitch them? And for most people, like, they don't, right? So that's why you always have to practice for free first, which is organically, double down on, the proven system, and then scale using paid ads.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And by a system, do you mean like a funnel like that, when you do run the ads, you run them through this process where they can book a call like with you easily, like on your website or a landing page? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. So system and processes, I just mean, are you actually using a process that has been proven to work? Or are you just kind of winging it and putting together what you think is going to work based on like a bunch of free YouTube videos that you may have watched? So for a lot of people, they do definitely have a system, not just to qualify the lead, but also to actually sell them. So at the very, very basics, like most people would at least need to know how to sell when they actually land the phone console.
Okay, so you have to learn how to sell. Do you help clients set up like a marketing funnel or you know what I mean? Like, so when you get the traffic, right? Do you have somewhere to send them other than like the DM straight to the Zoom call? I'm just trying to understand like what the process looks like, so any like fitness coaches listening to this can be like, oh, like I get it, like that's how
Mhm.
it works. So then I just need it, but I need to know like how to run the ads, how to sell them and stuff like that. And then that's when it has to be custom tailored to them, their niche, blah, blah, blah. But like in terms of the process, like where are you coaching them to set up websites? Like, do you
Mhm.
prefer that they sell like in the Facebook Messenger box? Like what is the best place to convert the customers to get on a call with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do not recommend a website. And the reason why I don't, we can talk about that first, is because a website is it's just a tool in the toolbox. It's not a strategy. So when people say, hey, I want clients, I'm going to make a website, that's kind of like saying, hey, I want to lose fat, so I'm going to buy protein bars, right? Like it's just a thing in isolation. You got to know how to use it. And with most people, like a website just lets people click around, and most strangers will check out your website, check out your prices, and then just click out of it, right? So I don't recommend a website. What I do recommend instead is to use Facebook and Instagram and to start actually putting out content that is of value to your niche. And then to be able to funnel those people onto a call by actually generating conversations with them inside Messenger.
So it goes down in the DMs. social
Yeah.
proof on the social media, put your value out there, and then do you like just hope that they DM you, or do you do cold outreach?
Right. So another really good topic within lead generation, there are two types, right? So there's inbound and there's outbound. So inbound is people coming to you, which is what we all love, because who doesn't love waking up to someone saying, hey, how do I work with you? And outbound is you going out and reaching out to the person who you think could benefit from the services. So someone who's aggressive is going to be doing both. But a big problem that I've seen in the industry is there are a lot of coaches who are purely focusing on outbound. And what happens is, hey, you've got fitness coaches who, they've been sold into a program, and then they're just being told to message 100 people a day, in hopes that one person replies. And so sometimes it can get a bit demotivating for a lot of coaches. It's like, hey, when they're told to just DM and cold DM 100 people a day, hoping that a few of them stick, and 50 of them might not even reply. Another 10 messages might be like, fuck off, right? And then another 30 might be people who maybe are interested but not enough to get on a call with you. So at least for us, like what we like to do is we like to focus on not just relying purely on outbound, but also inbound. And one way to do inbound is to actually be able to write good copy so that you can get more people raising their hands.
Yeah, and your copy's fire, so I can attest to that. Like that's why I'm on
Thank
this
you.
call. And it's really hard to write good copy. And like most people, when you look at their captions and stuff like that, it's just like and I've seen a few emails that you have about this. It's like how to, count your macros. Like an apple has 80 calories. Like, bro, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to sell anybody. We can all Google how many calories is in an apple. So if you can go into it a little bit, like just to talk about like what makes good copy, because I know this is something that you talk about a lot. Like what kind of process do you use? What kind of emotions are you looking to invoke from people when you write?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the biggest one that I see in the fitness space is too many coaches are focused on shallow copy, which is all about tips and tricks. So when you're thinking about what sort of content to write, you want to make sure that your content is not only educational, but also challenges your audience and also indoctrinates them to a certain way of thinking so that they eventually hire you. So, common things that we see would be like 3 tips on how to lose weight, or like 3 deadlift tips. And like, yeah, that's great. And hey, like you, the coach, probably likes talking about it. But someone reading that, are they going to read that and think like, hey, I really connect with this person, or hey, she's someone I actually need to hire? Probably not, because it's still more surface level and shallow. So if you want to take it to the next level, then one thing that a lot of coaches need to do is start talking about the deeper emotional pains and frustrations that their ideal client has. So instead of just talking about, tips on how to stay full, what you want to talk about is potentially maybe your story on how you had self-esteem issues and were bullied as a kid, and how fitness allowed you to overcome that, right? So that's one example, is more emotional or storytelling pieces. And another is more what I call perspective shifting type of copy. So what I mean by that is, hey, think about all the myths and all the misconceptions in the fitness space. How can you actually discredit those? And the reason why we do that is because discrediting certain myths immediately just positions you as an authority, right? Because who looks like more of an authority? Someone who preaches something, or someone who discredits a common practice, So that's one thing too. But then the added bonus of that is that it slowly starts to indoctrinate people into your approach. So you want to think about, hey, what are my competitors? And I don't just mean fitness coaches. I mean, what are my indirect competitors? That's going to be $99 booty building ebooks, or skinny teas, or waist trainers, or Herbalife. And so if you can discredit those things in your content, then straight away you're already getting people brought into the idea of one-on-one coaching.
Ooh,
Does that make sense?
yeah. If you guys are hearing this, listen closely, because that is some six-figure advice right there. That's really good. And I recently took a course on like positioning and depositioning. And that's like exactly what the guy was saying, like that's like depositioning. Like, not only do you want to try to establish yourself as an expert, obviously be an expert first, but then you want to look at other people, like when you're thinking about it like a business, because I used to think about it like, oh, these are nice guys, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, you know what I mean? But then when you start to look at it like a business, you're like, okay, like they're nice guys, I don't want to step on their toes, but these are my competitors. And what do I disagree with that they're saying? I'm trying to make a name for myself here, so I need to make a statement, you know what I mean? Like, you need to stand up for something so people can follow you. If you don't stand up for anything and all you do is just talk about 3 weight loss tips, then like, why follow you versus the next guy? And the next guy probably looks better than you because he has better genetics. So you can't rely on your looks either. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big mistake that I definitely fell into, and spent a lot of time thinking that I couldn't put myself out there fully because I was like, well, my physique is like half baked. Like, I could be more ripped. You know what I mean? I could be bigger. Like, I would literally tell myself in my head, like, when I'm 220 and I'm shredded and I look like I could be on like the classic physique stage, then I'll be totally ready and everyone will be begging to work with me. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a big trap that especially fitness people fall into, like thinking like, I don't look a certain way, so I can't coach people. But really, and I talk to a lot of coaches on this podcast, everyone says that like, how you look is important, but what you know is like way more important. And you have to look obviously like you work out. If you're just like some dumpy like idiot, then like, why are you trying to fitness coach people? But past the point where you're like way above like where a normal person would be, at that point, it's just about self-belief. And the problem with a lot of fitness pros is that we got into this because we're insecure. So I think that's like that's like really what we're trying to battle here is like, we're dealing with people who are insecure to charge high prices, insecure about how they look, insecure about, whether they can offer a service that is of like a really high value. And then the clients themselves have all these issues. So it's really about like cutting through the noise, I think, in this industry. And I think that you described that really well. Okay. So we got our copy on point. What do you think about, like social proof in terms of the amount of, and I'm just going to keep asking you questions. So if you need to go at some point, let me know. Like, I only have this much.
I was just checking that my cat wasn't like destroying the entire house.
I have another podcast in 1 hour, but like, I'm just going to basically keep getting information from you because I like your stuff. So what do you think about like followers, vanity metrics? Like, that's obviously something that a lot of people get in their heads as well. Like, oh, I only have 700 followers. Who's going to want to, work with me? What do you think about like, I know that right now it's hard to buy followers, but what do you think about like artificially boosting up your social proof by like buying, driving traffic to your page with an ad or something in order to get more followers? Do you recommend that your clients social proof like up to a certain point, or is it just like make sure that your content's banging and just start putting it out and you will organically grow?
Yeah. So for me personally, and I've made that mistake too, I would never recommend someone buy fake followers or do anything like that. What you can maybe do is hire the right people to get more eyeballs on your page, because more followers may mean that you can generate more conversations. But what I would not do is suggest that anyone, like buy their followers just because it's going to make them look more credible. I think there are definitely other ways that you can show proof that you're credible without a large following.
So, but how do you think that it would, well, I know I tried to buy followers, full disclosure. I tried to buy followers and they all dropped off with like, you know what I mean? Like in a month later, they were all gone. So all my followers right now are real, but I only have 2,900, but like, you know what I mean? And I thought like, I want to have 12,000. That's going to make me look way better. And when people come on my page, they're going to think, wow, you know what I mean? but then they all dropped off. So I don't think that buying followers is even
Yeah.
possible at this point. I don't know. Like, I don't want to invest any more money or time into that. But what do you think about, like, I know a lot of people now recommend like having ads, like just swipe up to follow me. I give a lot of like tips and stuff like that, and just pumping like $5-10 into that like a day, just to grow the funnel. Because I know that past 10,000, like, you're higher in the algorithm, you get the swipe up. And I noticed that a lot of fitness coaches hover around that like 10 to 15,000. And I started to think, like, did they purposefully do this? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think whether it's dumb or smart is going to depend on the influencer's intent behind it. So if someone's running ads to get people to follow them just because they want to look like they have more followers, then I would definitely say that's dumb. But if they're running ads to their Instagram page and then they know how to convert those new followers into clients, then I would say that's a solid strategy. So what a lot of people do is they might run ads, like you said, to get people to follow, and then they might potentially have someone else, like a VA or a setter or themselves, to then DM the people who follow them to then convert them on a call. So if you did that, then that would, without seeing the wider marketing strategy, I would say that's a solid approach.
And okay, got that. And then what do you think about other platforms, like, in order to, like, for example, this podcast, right? Starting, everybody wants to start a podcast now in order to establish authority. But I find that a lot of people end up de-establishing their authority because they have a shitty podcast that nobody can listen to for 5 seconds. And then it's like, okay, he has 700 followers. He has a shitty podcast. He has a shitty YouTube channel. Everything's shitty. You know what I mean? So this guy's shitty. I don't want to buy his thing. Right. So do you recommend that people stay in your lane and just be hyper-focused on the thing that you're good at? Or do you think that they should take, like, because a lot of people talk about like omnipresence, that you should be everywhere, but what if you're not ready to produce the content at, a point where you can be everywhere? What do you think about like YouTube, podcasts, like things outside, like more long form stuff? Like, do you recommend that people have a strategy for that as well?
Yeah, so I think the whole idea of omnipresence has been taken a lot out of context, because yes, that's important for people who may be, already at a few hundred thousand a month and are looking to scale. Then yes, dominating other platforms is going to be important. But for most people, they're just starting out their business. It makes a lot more sense for them to focus on one platform and own that than it is for them to try and spread themselves thin on 5 different platforms and then not do a good job on either one. Because, admittedly, I'm not an expert when it comes to YouTube or podcasts. Facebook and Instagram is where, what most of our clients use. But I would guess that, growing a podcast is going to take a completely different strategy than Facebook and Instagram, and same with YouTube. So I'd always recommend, for someone who is looking to grow a business, especially if their goal is to get a cash injection fast and get clients as quick as possible, then from what I've seen, Facebook is going to be the quickest platform for you to use if you want clients like now or next week. Whereas I think podcasts and YouTube organic is more so a long game. But then, like, admittedly, that's not my area of expertise.
I think that you're right. It's obvious, it's hard to build up more long form stuff, and the algorithm doesn't really favor you as much as that, like, one-on-one, like, hey man, I'm selling this, you're buying this. So in terms of Facebook, do you recommend people sell off their personal page, or like, should they have a business page? And then with Instagram, should it be personal or business? Because if you have a personal Facebook page, now you don't have an Instagram business page. But I find that a lot of coaches sell off a personal Facebook page. So what do you think about that, personal versus business?
Yeah, I am 100% for personal page. And the reason being, with Facebook business page, like, first you want to remember, at least in the high ticket space, you're not selling people on the front end, right? Like, the only time you really try and sell someone is when they're on the phone with you towards the end of the phone call. So with a business page, there are just certain things you can't do, like add people as a friend and talk to people at scale, right? So I always say personal page, also because the other reason is that if you're at the beginning stages, then it's a lot easier to go down the route of a personal brand. in the sense that people want to buy from you because you're you and because they know you and they've seen you. So with a personal page, people probably know that you've been there since maybe like 2010, right? And you've got pictures of you in the past, and people can see that you're a real person who's posting content. Whereas if you make a new Facebook page, or if you're using a business page, then people might not necessarily see the history of that person or even the person at all. And so it's a lot harder to build trust, or at least enough trust to get someone to actually want to pay you a high ticket price point if you're just using a business page or a new personal page you've made 2 weeks ago.
Okay, that makes sense. And then what do you think about like having a Facebook group? Like, is that something that you would recommend for a new coach to do? Is it something you should start to build up immediately, or should you wait till you're at a certain point to start building your group?
Yeah, that's a great question. So different coaches, like different business coaches, are going to say different things. I know some people who have had really good success starting a Facebook group super early on and then monetizing that. At the same time, with most of our clients, we don't necessarily make a Facebook group unless they already have one or they already got some experience with a few clients. So my personal input is that if you're like super new and you're at the beginning stages of your business and you don't have much of an audience, then I would not recommend a Facebook group just yet. And the reason why is because you want to look at it like a funnel. So if you are on Facebook and you have like 100 friends, right? Only 50 of them might see your stuff. And then of that 50, only 10 might end up joining your group. And so what I recommend is that you get more bang for buck in your activity if you focus on generating leads without a group, and then eventually transition to a group when you've got a bit more of a following.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I think I want to talk a little bit more if you're cool, like 20, 30 minutes, but I'm done grilling you on business stuff. I think I've sucked enough out of you. Okay, so I just want to get to know you a little bit better, because about the reason that I grill you so much and ask about all these things is because I do this with all the guests. I had an IFBB pro on, and I was like, what steroids are you taking? How much HGH did you take? How much did you take in your off season? How much? Because I want people, when they listen to this podcast, to get a ton of information and be like, wow, like nobody asks those like kind of questions. Everyone, because what I hate is everyone wants to like talk about fluff. Everyone wants to talk about mindset. Change your money mindset, believe in yourself, invest in yourself. And that's great. Like, that content will always exist. It'll always have an audience and stuff like that. But I feel like people listen to that so much and then they don't ask the questions, the hard business questions of like, okay, what's the ROI on this? What's the, what do you think about this strategy and stuff like that? So I just wanted to ask you a lot of those questions. So, cause I have a lot of fitness coaches that listen to this podcast, because I only interview people who are high up already that have fitness coaches following them. And I started the podcast thinking that I'm going to get like coaching clients from the podcast. But then what I found is that a lot of fitness influencers that actually ended up listening to the podcast, but an audience is an audience. They have clients and stuff like that too. So that's totally fine. But okay. So I want to ask you about your lifestyle. How did you make the transition from being, like you said, like charging $30 a month or whatever? How did you get to the point where you decided that you wanted to charge high ticket? And how long did it take for you to, like you said, when you were in debt, you took out that credit card? What did that look like for you? How, like, what was that breakthrough point for you? And what did your packages look like? And how did you do?
Right. So the turning point for me was when I was still in my job and I was scrolling on Facebook, and I came across this ad. And this ad was this guy called Sam Ovens, and his promise was like, hey, if you buy my course, you're going to be able to like grow an online business and charge high prices. So when I looked at it, I was like, I don't know, like this sounds kind of scammy. I don't know, like his course was $1,500. And I remember watching his VSL, so like his webinar presentation, and I read every single one of his emails. And eventually I was like, you know what, like $1,500 is a lot of money for me at that point. But if this works, then it's going to change my life. And if it doesn't, then like, at least I know, right? At least I tried. So then I did the course, and it, the information was great. And that's how I initially got introduced into the whole like world of high ticket. but I didn't necessarily get results. So I did the work like every single day, cold message a bunch of people, ran a free fitness challenge and only had like 2 people sign up, even when I offered a cash prize, right? So I was like, damn, like, this kind of sucks. I didn't really get results, but I kept going. Like I kept doing the work. And then one day my ex-boyfriend, so his best friend, personal trained for a politician in India, and was like, hey, I'm leaving that job and he needs a replacement. Do you want to do it? So I was talking to my ex-boyfriend and we were like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be crazy. It's going to allow you to focus more on your fitness business and you don't have to work for someone else. And, this job's going to be easy. And we're going to get paid like 5,000 US dollars a month. In India, with the cost of living being a tenth of what it is here, sounded like the dream, right? Minus the fact that we had to move countries. So I was like, that's when I, like, to tie it all together, I was in that 2-week transitionary period between 2 jobs. And I was like, yeah, let's go to India. So we broke our lease like early and had to pay a fine for it. I told my family and my mom was like, please don't do this. Like, you're insane. But we went to India anyway. And I was still working on my online business at that point. And I remember just, working on the bed because we didn't even have a proper like space to work on. Sitting on the bed on my laptop, working like 8 hours a day, trying to get people to buy from me. And that was the beginning stages for me of growing my online business.
In India?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I actually had kind of like a similar thing happen to me. Like that I used to live in Thailand during study abroad, and I lived there for like a little while after that. I had like an affiliate marketing for like supplements and stuff like that online. And then I had this guy offer me like, hey, come be my like personal, like the same thing, like my personal trainer, blah, blah, blah. I'm setting up this whole thing. He was like this like big businessman, whatever. And then he was like, kept telling me, yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then I like almost deferred like going back to school and stuff because I was so excited to do this. Similar offer to like what you're saying. And then at the last minute, just like no responses, blacked out, was supposed to buy me my plane ticket, nothing. I'm glad I didn't defer my like college enrollment because I could kind of smell like maybe this is bullshit. So for any of you guys out there that want to be like, don't, if it's too good to be true, it's probably bullshit. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
Why do these guys even offer, kids like shit like that and just to jerk them around? Like, why do they do that? I don't know.
Yeah. And even just to like continue with that story, that was the biggest risk that I took. Like, quit my job, broke my lease, moved countries to a country that like I had never been before. And like, it was really difficult to adjust. But then that's not even the worst thing, right? So we got paid in cash. Like we get paid in cash at the end of each month or like at the beginning. And so like this one day, the guy we were working for was like, hey, so I'm going to cut your salary in half because like this is way more than what people here get paid. And so suddenly we went from being paid $5,000 a month to being paid like $2,500 a month. And because of what we sacrificed in terms of the lifestyle change and, it just wasn't worth it. So the crazy thing was that at that time, I was kind of starting to get clients, starting to get traction. After our payday, we just left the country with like $7,000 of cash in our suitcases and started traveling.
And where did you guys go? Like, how long did you travel for? Where did you go?
We went to Thailand, Malaysia, Australia. Yeah, those are the places that we went. So I was kind of living that like, actually kind of living the life that I wanted, like the typical freedom, travel, online business lifestyle at that point.
And now are you like settled in London and you're happy like with a permanent base, or do you still like feel like when Corona's over and stuff that you want to live that like laptop lifestyle kind of thing?
Yeah. So, what they don't tell you, and like it might just be me, but I'm more comfortable with routine and having a long-term base. So the downside of traveling, and even in 2019, I went to like 5-6 different countries, is that your routine gets like off balance and it feels weird, and you're traveling across time zones, and your diet's different, you can't stick to the gym, things like that. I'm definitely like settled in London. I would like to move to the US and live there a bit longer. So last year I was in San Diego for 3 months, and that was amazing. But for now, like, I definitely say settled in London. Yeah.
And you're from Hong Kong, right? Originally?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you like Hong Kong? Like, would you ever live there? What is it like about it that made you want to leave? Is it that you didn't like it, or is it just that you wanted to explore?
Yeah. So my parents had lived in London when they were young and worked in London. So naturally, like, I had dual nationality in the sense that I could technically live in Hong Kong or live in the UK. And so for university, there weren't that many options in Hong Kong. So that's why I went to London to study. But then after that, I just ended up staying here.
And when you were doing your fitness coaching business and it started to go well and you started to have a good amount of clients and make good money and you're comfortable with that, whatever, how did you why and how did you decide to switch to the business side of it? Because then you're starting from scratch again, you know what I mean? So how did that go? How did you transition like your income? Was it a smooth transition? And how did you decide to like do that 180 shift, or do you still offer fitness coaching? Like, what does your
Mhm.
uh, model look like now in terms of that?
Yeah. So when I studied more about business while I was running my fitness coaching company, what I found is that naturally it just felt more aligned with me and my interests. And so I think personality wise, I'm the type of person where I like to like challenge myself intellectually quite a lot. And I just felt like I kind of hit that ceiling with fitness where I didn't, yeah, I could self study, right? But then in reality, there wasn't too much strategy behind how to coach someone, right? And consulting. It was pretty much like, hey, write someone's program and then like do their macros. So then as I started getting good at business, I was like, hmm, well, what if I could teach other people how to do this too? So my first two clients, the first one was the guy who had to like do Uber Eats to get the investment together, and my second one was like she was like a mom who was in corporate and had been trying to grow her business for a long time. Both of them hit 10K in their second month. So then that was like, that's when I was like, I'm actually maybe pretty good at this. And then slowly I just felt like I'd been in the fitness space at that point for like maybe like 7 years. It just didn't excite me as much. And so the way I saw it, like I wasn't doing my clients justice if they were paying me a ticket price point, and I wasn't as mentally engaged. So that's when I slowly started to transition over.
And how did that transition look like? Did you just cut, did you just let your clients like peter off? How did you tell, your clients that you were making this shift? How did you go about rebranding? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you use the same pages and stuff like that? Like, how did you make that shift?
Yeah, so it's funny because two of my clients actually left me on their own around the same time that I was going to tell them that we were finishing that month, because they could already sense that I wasn't as engaged as I used to be. So the rest of the clients, we just kind of slowly phased out and ended it at the end of that month, because we were kind of doing it on like a month-to-month rolling basis. And a lot of them were continuing after that 90-day set period. So just slowly transition those ones out. And then in terms of switching over, I wouldn't necessarily, because I was running everything from Facebook and Instagram. At that point, we didn't have a lot of pages in place, like funnels or anything. We just turned off our Facebook ads. And then in terms of Instagram and Facebook content, just pivoted in terms of what I was posting.
And I want to talk to you about one last thing, like a more airy fairy sort of thing. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
talk about like law of attraction in business. Like, you do your affirmations, you hope for what you want, and like the universe comes together to get you this sort of stuff. You know what I mean? Like the kind of the cultural background that I'm from very much frowns on these kind of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But I know in America it's a big thing. You know what I mean? So what do you think about like, but I do sometimes think like that. And when you say like those clients dropped off the exact time that you decided to make the shift, do you think that there's some kind of like invisible hand that guides people when they do these things? What do you think about like the law of attraction and that kind of mindset when it comes to being a business person?
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, I think a lot of people are super, super bought into the idea of like, oh, manifestation, like, oh, write something down and it's going to come true. But the way I see it, like the real way that works is that, yeah, it starts with you believing something, but then you believing that it's possible is what causes you to take the aligned action. And it's the action that you take that then determines the result. So I think a lot of the time it's definitely exaggerated, or people don't necessarily understand it in its full context. But I wouldn't say I'm a big fan of like, hey, crystals and, like 10-hour mindset routines and things like that.
So when it comes to like coaching people and stuff like that, how much do you coach people on an emotional basis? You know what I mean? Like, this is what you're meant to do. Like, you got it. Like, you could do. How much motivating do you do, and how much, clear cut? Like, okay, do this, do this, do this. I don't care about how you feel. Just run these ads and make these funnels and sell like this, and you will get the results. Like, how do you balance those things?
Yeah, so that's really dependent on the client and what style they respond to. So sometimes at the beginning, when every client onboards, we ask them like, hey, how do you like to be coached? And the important thing is we always tell them to just communicate to us how they like to be coached, because some clients need a lot more verbal reassurance or like emotional support, whereas other clients, they just want to be told what to do. So I don't have a set structure in terms of like the way we coach, but it's more so adapting to the client to see what they need at that time. One thing that I do say though is that we're not we're not necessarily there to be just their cheerleader or their best friend. So, and like I've been in that situation too. Like I've hired a coach and all she did was almost just like cheer me on and tell me how everything was amazing and everything I wrote was amazing. But like that's not really what people need, right? Like people sometimes need to hear the truth and they need to be told that certain things can be better. So the way I see it is, hey, like if someone needs emotional support, then absolutely, like we'll give that to them. But we're not there to be kind of like airy fairy best friends.
So I guess my next question would be, what kind of character traits do you see that make a successful entrepreneur? If somebody were to come contact you on a consult and you analyze their personality while you're talking to them, you have a psychology background and stuff like that. Like what are you looking for to be like, this guy or this girl is like, got it? And what do you sometimes see people do that makes you feel like, I don't know if I want to work with this person and maybe not even take on the risk on my part?
Yeah, so a good sign for us is someone who is like, they show clear signs of wanting to change on the goal. So it's like clearly they're not satisfied with where they are and they've got big goals. A big one is that people have big goals. So whenever we ask them like what they want, if it's like 5K or 10K or like 20, 30K, that's amazing because it means that they have goals um, that are actually big, right? And actually meaningful. Whereas sometimes if someone's goals are just like, hey, they want to make extra money on the side, or they just want to make an extra $1,000 a month, then those tend to not be the best fits, because if your goal is just to create some, a side hustle or some extra money, then that's not necessarily enough of a driver to actually push through the discomfort.
So what about in terms of like their experience, like how they look, or are those, is that ever a factor? Like, do you ever see somebody and be like, wow, like this person looks incredible, they will be able to get like a ton of clients? And have you seen, because we're in the fitness space, so I have to ask, is there like, do you see that people with really incredible physiques and way that they, look, get more clients faster? Like, is that true at all?
So that helps, but your sales skills and you doing the work is going to matter more than your physique. Just to put things into perspective, I mean, we have clients who don't have a physique that's anywhere near the Instagram body, right? And he charges like his package is 2,700, like 2,700 for 3 months. At the same time, there are a lot of people who, like fitness influencers, for example, and they have amazing physiques, but they still struggle. So like, yeah, if two people have the same personalities and they did the same amount of work and they have the same sales skills, then yeah, like the person who looked a bit better might potentially get better clients. But I think like if we're looking at the bigger picture, there are definitely more things that contribute more to whether someone gets results or not, beyond like whether they're shredded or not.
And what do you think about these like niches and like the bio, like I help fit moms do this, I help busy guys do this? Do you think that you have to niche down to like fit moms and busy guys, or do you know, how do you instruct people to properly niche down? Because I feel like everyone just takes like a certain like type of client avatar and is just like, I help these people. And it's like, okay, but like, you know what I mean? Like, are you just saying that because you want, you know, those kind of clients or whatever, or like, is that really who you can serve the best? Like, cause I watched in this positioning course, the guy was saying a big mistake a lot of people make is like Prada doesn't say we help rich people get cool bags. They just make awesome bags and then rich people want to buy them. You know what I mean? So do you feel like it kind of like, I don't know, what do you think about niching and like how to niche properly?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake that people make when niching down is they niche down on the demographic and not the psychographic. So when we think of niching down, like most people think, oh, I don't want to work with an accountant who's 25 to 35 and lives in the suburbs and has 2 kids. Like a niche has nothing to do or very little to do with that person's on paper demographic, right? The nationality and stuff like that. But a niche has everything to do with their psychographic, which is how they think. And predicated to that is the problem that you can solve for them. So whenever it comes to niching down should be based off the problem that you can solve for a group of people, and not so much the like bio data of that person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That like, I think that the way that you think about this, like psychology behind the sales stuff with the copy and with this is really, really interesting. Like the psych, I never heard somebody say that before. You should make a YouTube video about that. I would share it.
I've
All
actually
right.
been like going back and forth with starting YouTube for so long.
Oh, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it?
I probably should.
Yeah, well, as somebody who's trying to grow on YouTube, but I just recently started. I just had my first video clear 1,000 views, which is good.
Nice.
So, and then my old YouTube channel when I was affiliate marketing had like 5K subs. We had some videos break like 100,000, which drove like a ton of traffic. But it's hard though, like with the algorithm these days. I think that the really best way to do it is the videos that I perform the best is like literally just take almost the exact title and topic of someone else that already did it and just remake the video in your own style. Don't even watch the video, just and make the thumbnail like theirs. And like, it sounds a little copycat-ish, but like we're trying to grow a business here. And that's what I found works. Because I tried to make my own like evergreen content and it gets 10 views. Like nobody gives a fuck. You know what I mean? Because they don't know me yet. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think that, yeah, if you want to do YouTube, like hit me in the DMs. I watched a course on it that really helped me understand like how to, whatever. So, all right, Hannah, thanks so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed the conversation. This is exactly kind of like what I wanted from you. I got all the answers that I wanted for myself, and I hope that everyone else can learn, because I honestly think you're a wealth of information, and I can tell that you think about this like business, you know, not only the business model, but the pricing and the psychology behind it, which is going to be like a hugely important part that most people completely miss. Like, why are you doing the things that you're doing? Not just like, what are you doing? Like, you might be posting, but are you psychologically, you know what I mean? Like, is the content that you're posting engaging people correctly? So that's what I want people to kind of like take away from this. And like, what you really have to offer is that selling mindset, because that, you know, that's what got my attention. And I just like, the copy is just like, when I got hit with the Facebook ad about the BDSM like thing, I was like, I've never seen a Facebook ad like this before. Like, it's kind of shock. What do you think about shock marketing? Like, is what you're doing shock? Because I talked to another guy. I love the guy. He's one of the best marketers in the fitness industry. His name is Dr. Tony Huge. I don't know if you ever heard about him.
No, I haven't. He's
been on like National Geographic. Like, he's just really big in like the SARMs, like enhanced bodybuilding sort of realm. And he does like almost exclusively shock marketing, and always says that like, you have to tell people some shit that they never heard before that really shocks them. And then when they get into your like more evergreen content, they'll see that you're actually like more of a reasonable guy, or when they talk to you or meet you. But like, what do you think about shock marketing? Why did you decide to brand yourself as like a savage bitch? Like, why take that angle when most business coaches are trying to be all like prim and proper in a suit, like, you know, I'm gonna, you know, help you scale your business kind of thing?
Yeah, you know, like it's funny you say that because like whenever I do podcasts now, that's how everyone introduces me. But the irony or the backstory behind that is that in the powerlifting gym I used to go to, we have this inside joke of everyone like calling themselves a savage. And so like that's kind of ironic, right? Like, hey, if you call yourself a savage, then like let's be honest, savage. So then that's when I just, and like I think me personality wise, I wasn't necessarily the type of person who is very like airy fairy rah rah sort of energy, whereas naturally I just tended to be a bit more direct. So then I was like, why not just put in something that people can remember? And then it just started to become a thing. But in terms of shock marketing, I mean, people are on like everyone says, hey, you need to be polarizing if you want to be remembered. And that's true. But what people miss is polarizing doesn't mean like being rude or talking down at your audience or just, you know, saying fuck every other sentence, right? Polarizing actually means having messaging that may challenge people, that is true to you, and that is actually aligned with what you believe in, as well as putting out messaging that might potentially, as a byproduct of you taking a stand, like piss people off and get people to actually remember what you say. So I think, yeah, definitely like so long as it's, you know, in the right context and it's congruent with your personality and your brand, then I'd say it's better to be shocking and remembered than to be, you know, vanilla and safe but forgotten and sound like every other person.
Do you get a lot of hate on your stuff? Like, I know that you said that people are offended when they hear like, you know, what you're talking about. Could you just talk a little bit about like why you think people are so get mad when you talk about, you know, these things like charging higher prices and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, at least in the fitness space, have been indoctrinated by the mindset that it's greedy to charge more, or that if you charge high prices, then you're kind of scamming people. So like that's one thing, is a lot of the time, at least from what I've seen, people who tend to hate on, you know, high ticket tend to be people who probably aren't too happy with how things are going themselves. But the other thing is too, like I mean, I don't actually read the comments in my ads that much at all, but it's super common that a lot of Facebook ads, regardless of whether it's me or someone else, does tend to have a lot of hate. And that's the nature of advertising is, you know, you're interrupting someone's newsfeed to put your ad in their face. And so just in that context, people probably aren't going to be super happy. And so, yeah, like with getting hate on Facebook ads, I'd say that's just kind of like a normal part of the game. But for me, I just don't really look at, I just like, yeah, I just like don't really look at those comments because it takes time for me to actually go into Ads Manager, pull the ads up, and like check the comments.
And did you ever talk to somebody that was like hating and was like completely opposed to what you were saying, and then actually convince them that, you know, what you're saying is correct, and then actually sign them up and then have them actually do well? Have you had that experience?
The closest we've had is some guy commenting something really rude in our ads and then actually reaching out for help like a month later and then apologizing and saying like, hey, I'm sorry for the comment that I made on your ad actually. And like we got on a phone consult with him. He didn't become a client, but that's the closest story I have.
Yeah, I see like a lot of people sometimes like hate in the comments, and then when you actually address them and you're like, hey man, like I get it, this, that, and this, and then they actually become a fan. Like I've seen that happen many times and had that experience myself. So I think sometimes when you get haters and stuff, like they're actually, there's like a part of them that made them want to comment as opposed to like ignore it. So they do have some level of interest. All right, Hannah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate your time. I would love to have you on again sometime. What I'm trying to do with the podcast is I want to create, so right now I'm in like the first phase of like acquiring guests and getting to know people and establishing, the podcast and that we have high quality guests. And then after that, I want to transition to a model where like we have like group calls where we can focus in on specific topics. So I would love to invite, I don't know when this will be in the future, but I'd love to have you on again to like really drill down on business and maybe have someone else and we can do like a roundtable and really, really talk about it. So if you're interested in that, we'll be in touch. And again, thank you. I like to give everyone a final message. So if there's, anything you want to do, pitch your services, tell people what you're about if they don't already get it. So the floor is yours.
Love it. Well, if you are a fitness coach trying to get more online clients, then we do have a free course that outlines the beginning steps that you want to take. So if you want that, then just shoot me a message on Instagram, HannahChan921, and just say you found me from Elon's podcast, and then we'll hook you up.
Awesome. All right, Hannah, thank you so much. This is episode 19. Peace.
Peace.